records of service, and luckily he was the first one on the list, so... Chapter 1! Low romance and high corruption is your recipe. And the skip button also. You know, that might just come in handy. Alright, come in. Aiba! Hijikata has the longest fucking room. And I guess it makes sense. Because they wanted Hijikata to be the main boy! But anyway, Hijikata, you should rest. Hijikata-san, you're the one who should be resting. You don't look very good. He looked at me, and I felt as if I'd suddenly stepped into a blizzard.
俺が休んだら誰が新選組を支えるんだ。薩長ともう一度戦うためには腰の座らねえ幕府のお偉いさん方の尻を蹴っ飛ばさなきゃならねえ。俺以外にそんな真似ができるやつがこの隊にいるのか。余計な口出しするんじゃねえ。
I didn't expect a friendly agreement, but neither had I expected that. Without Kondo-san to speak to the Shogun on our behalf, only Hijikata-san could hold the Shinsengumi together.
土方さん、そういう言い方はねえんじゃねえの？こいつは一応あんたのことを心配して。
No, it's all right, Heisuke. I turned back towards Hijikata-san and bowed my head silently. Forgive me. I should not have spoken out of turn.
てめえの体のことくらい分かってるつもりだ。休むべき時には休むさ。
His condition still worried me, but he was a smart man, and he was aware of his own weaknesses. It wasn't really my place to say whether or not I thought he was fit to work as hard as he did. Maybe, just maybe, he'd be okay. There we are. There's the music I was waiting for. Unfortunately, make him endure it. What was I going to do? Blood would certainly calm him down, but I didn't think Hijikata-san would want that. I was running out of options. I could make him take the medicine I'd made, but Sana-san had said that it was only a temporary solution. The pain was getting worse. I could hear his teeth grind, and the muscles in his neck looked ready to snap. He tore at his hair in agony. Hijikata-san, are you alright? I ran towards him, but he threw out an arm as if to stop me.
いいから放っておけ。もう似たようなことは何度も経験してんだ。時間が経てばなんとかなる。
You all say the same bullshit. But
三男さんや平助や、俺が羅刹化を命じた連中はこいつを乗り越えたんだろう。だったら俺に我慢できねえはずがねえ。だから放っておけ。
even while his body writhed, his eyes burned with a determination, driven by fear and pain. The more it hurt, the harder he fought. I couldn't bear to see him in pain any longer, and I turned to leave the room. And I left him. I listened to him suffering for what seemed like an eternity. Had I done the right thing, I wondered? I could have forced him to take the medicine, although I was sure I would have been scolded for it. Perhaps as I'd known him better, I could have thought of another way to help him. If Inoue and Yamazaki-san had been there instead of me, what would they have done? Worry and regret washed over me, and I spent the night tossing and turning, unable to sleep. I decided to... Wait, is this real? Is this for real? Stay behind? Alright, I trust you, guide. I'll stay here. Promise! Even without a word, Amagiri had easily defeated Kondo-san. I had only a Kodachi and the barest minimum of training. I could not possibly win. The tip of my blade shook madly, but I kept it raised. I'm sorry, Hijikata-san, I thought to myself. I might not be able to make it through this. I think the demon will leave Kondo-san alone at least. I'm sorry I won't be able to stay by your side any longer. But I hope you and Kondo-san will keep fighting. Well, that was 1 minute ago. Chapter 2. Right, low romance and high corruption is your recipe. What could I do for him? Tell him to rest. Please, Hijikata-san. You need to rest. You shouldn't push yourself too hard. That was the most I could say to him.
あの天霧ってやつの言葉が本当なら、羅刹の力をむやみやたらに使わなきゃいいだけの話だろう。できる限り休むようにはするさ。この大変な時期に倒れちまったら、元も子もねえもんな。
I felt the tension in my shoulders relax. At last. So, what will the Shinsegae be doing now? Make him endure it! Hijikata-san, does it hurt? I asked and he shook his head in response.
この程度、耐え抜いてみせるさ。俺を誰だと思ってやがるんだ。
But I didn't know what to do. I simply stood there helpless as Hijikata-san clutched his hands in his stomach and curled around them in pain. He dropped to his knees, still groaning in pain. Hijikata-san, please hang in there. His hands twitched and scraped at his skin, trying desperately to stem the pain coursing through him. Hijikata-san had never been a man to show emotion or pain to others. That he was reduced to such a state said more about the agony he was in than anything else. Desperate for something, anything to hold on to, his hand wrapped itself around my arm. It was clammy with sweat and shook violently. His grip, however, was as strong as ever, and I felt his fingers dig into my flesh as pain began to run up my arm. I bit my quivering lip, trying to restrain myself. My pain was nothing next to what he felt. I had no right to complain. There was nothing more I could do, so I simply held him until the shaking began to subside and his breath grew slowly less ragged. He made it through the pain somehow, but his face was even more drawn and haggard than before. It hurt to even look at him. He couldn't possibly intend to simply weather the pain every time, could he? Was that even possible? Alright, the sacrifice. What should I say? Well, we're convincing Kondo-san to escape. Kondo-san, please think about what you're doing. You can escape with us. Hijikata-san and Shimada want you to live. Kondo-san smiled down at me. My attempt to convince him to leave laughably ineffective.
俺はもう十分生きたよ。それに もし俺が逃げ出したいなんて言えば、トシは羅刹になって自分の命を削って新政府軍と戦うに決まってる。羅刹の力を使えばトシの寿命はどんどん縮んでしまうんだろう。
So Kondo-san had known how high the cost of becoming a fury really was. He must have heard Hijikata-san and Sana-san discussing it the night Sana-san learned the truth.
あいつの命を糧にしてまで生き延びるのは。
He gave a sad, lonely laugh, and I felt like my heart might break in two. I made no more attempts to convince him. Alright, how far are we going? No. Just then, I saw something flash in the corner of my eye. Eyes.
おのれ化け物め
No! Hijikata-san will... Before I could complete the thought, my body moved. I charged towards the soldier, aiming his rifle, hoping to shove the barrel down from its target. However,
えい離せ
as the sound of his scream registered in my ears, a sharp blast followed it, making my ears ring in pain. I felt all of my strength leaving my body, and I fell face first into the ground.
雪村君雪村先輩しっかりしてください
From afar, I could hear what sounded to be the desperate cries of Shimada and Soma. What happened to me? I wanted so badly to raise myself, for my body to stand like everything was okay, but I felt weak. I felt consciousness leave me. Chapter 310. Which romance and high corruption is your recipe. And we'll hit the skip button at some point. Oh, that's what Tsunamiya! I remember what happened there. Oh, Hijikata got hurt, didn't he? Like, badly. Ah, it's an authority! Authority! What could I say to help lessen that pain? One is clearly more pain lessening than the other. The other one, I have no idea why that's an option. I don't think this is the time to be weak. You have responsibilities.
責任
He raised an eyebrow. The men that are still with us, warriors like Inoue or Yamazaki-san, who died for you. And most of all, Kondo-san himself, who left the Shinsengumi to you. I know it's hard, but you need to pull yourself together and get back to work. I wanted to cheer him up, even if it was just a little bit. Perhaps my words were a bit harsh. His burdens were great indeed, but I knew him. You could get through this. He just had to try. But he only sighed.
ああ分かってるさ肩に背負ったもんを今さら放り出せるとは思っちゃいねえよ
Hijikata-san bit his lip furiously, looking away from me. It was only when he spoke that I realized just how deep into despair he'd fallen. Perhaps my words had been a little too harsh. We fell silent again, and only sounds were nearby bugs chirping and fluttering in the night. Ah, there it is. Ah! Make him endure it! I reached into my pocket to pull out the medicine, but
いい余計なことをするんじゃねえ
But he shook his head.
ここまで耐えてきたんだ今さらこんな苦しみに負けてたまるかよ
He was doing his best to resist, but it seemed that the pain was more intense than before. As Hijikata-san shook horrifically, I couldn't help but wince. There was nothing I could do. Suddenly, his knees buckled. Hijikata-san! I wrapped my arms around as much of him as I could and held gently, tightly. He was in too much pain now to even speak. He could only groan. Even breathing seemed to hurt. Nails scrabbled across his chest as he scratched at it, almost as if he could tear it off and let all the pain flow out. I felt tears well up in my eyes. Was this really the only way? Perhaps I'd made a grave mistake. Perhaps I should have given him blood. Instead, I just held him until the bloodlust lessened. I had to do something. No! Okay, stop Hijikata, apparently. Hijikata, no! Cosmo's sword flickered as he moved slightly. Hijikata-san no longer had even enough strength to lift his blade to block or parry. I could see in his eyes the realization that his death was almost upon him. No! My mind went blank. There was no time for thought, only action. I leapt across the room faster than I'd ever moved before.
何
His eyes went wide with surprise, but it was too late. For a moment, everything was silent. Then I fell, sliding backwards onto the floor. Cosmo's sword was the Demon Slayer. Not even my demonic healing abilities could repair the gaping wound that was beginning to bleed profusely.
バカ野郎どうして飛び出してくるんだよ
He could barely breathe, or even speak, but he still managed to sound as if he was scolding me. I tried to turn my head to meet his eyes, but my body no longer moved. All I could see was the ceiling. I coughed blood. Shinsengumi needs you. Even if Hijikata-san thought that he'd lost his direction, there were still plenty of people who looked up to him. They dreamt of being like him, and they'd follow him into hell without a second thought if he asked. He felt lost, but I knew he had the strength to find his way again, and the courage to push ahead. Even if I couldn't be there for him when he found his way back, there had to be something there for him. Something beyond the hill he'd been climbing for so long. I couldn't let him die before he found it. That was a very long fade out. Now on to game over number 4. Once again, low romance and high corruption is your recipe. Of course. We, make him endure it. His face warped in pain, and Hijikata-san spoke up.
お前は何もしなくていい。
It was like he'd seen right through me. But he shook his head once.
発作くらい自分で抑えねえと傷が治っても戦場に立てねえだろうが。
As the words came out of his mouth, his knees gave way. Whoops. Hijikata-san! He curled in on himself, moaning in pain. I wrapped my arms around his body and held him tightly. Even breathing caused him to moan in pain. His fiery nature drove him to thirst for blood. Exhausted and injured, his body craved it even more. His pain, therefore, increased with every episode, and I could see it reach into every corner of his body, trapping him in a cruel fate. Hijikata-san! He looked like he could barely breathe. The bullets were devouring his body and his soul. How much longer could he survive like this? I could scarcely bear to think about it, but I felt as if his time was nearly up. I nodded. Which one is the answer? Let's see. Is it going to be the same that I think it is? Oh, never mind. That's actually the opposite. All right. I'll never leave his side. I'll be sure to keep an eye on him. I won't ever leave his side. Of course, that was something I planned to do in any event. Saito-san's desire happened to coincide happily with my own.
頼まれるようなことは何一つねえよ。あんまりこいつを調子に乗らせるな。
He gave Saito-san a sideways grin and shook his head. Saito-san said nothing. He just looked at us with a peaceful stare. It's gonna be, hey Enomoto, with your glorious mustache. Ooh, this scene hurts in so many ways at the end of it, but it was too late. My hand had scarcely touched the hilt of my sword when the furious blade sunk itself into my chest. I tried to scream, but no sound came out, and I fell to the floor in silence. As the world began to turn dark, I realized in a distant, numb way that I felt no pain. Someone was calling my name from very far away. Was it my father? Or Hesuke? Or Sanan-san? Or Hijikata-san? But before I could call his name, the darkness took me, and I fell into a deep, never-ending sleep. On to chapter 5 to do our bad ending and unrecorded love ending. So first, bad ending. Low romance and high corruption is your recipe. I take it back. Alright, we've done this. And we, of course, make him endure it. Hijikata-san, my blood. I grabbed my sword, ready to draw it out and cut my fingers, but Hijikata-san yanked my hand, which had grasped the sheath, and he looked at me tenderly. Then he slowly shook his head. I could see in his eyes that he would never agree to take my blood. Why are you doing this?
こいつは戒めみたいなものだ。俺が耐えなきゃならねえものなんだよ。だから血はいらねえんだ。
He body rebelled, his mind held strong. How could I try and tear down such determination? Instead, I wrapped my arms around him and held him as tightly as I could. As his body shook and twitched as his body shook and twitched as his fury blood clawed at the inside of his veins and his mind. I could almost see it draining life and sanity from him, more than I'd ever had before. The pain grew so intense that I could no longer speak. Hijikata-san. I squeezed him even tighter. He already suffered under a burden that would kill a lesser man, but he insisted on bringing himself even greater pain. Why did he do these things? I wanted to help more than anything, but all I could do was watch. And that was so frustrating. Tears began to roll down my cheeks. He was suffering horribly. There was nothing I could do or say. Perhaps he was running out of time, just like he'd said. That thought terrified me. Wait. It was mid-March and Ezo was starting to welcome their late spring. As we had long anticipated, the Imperial Army's naval fleet had finally arrived in Edo. Allegedly, their ships were going to dock in Miyako Bay, and the news of their arrival spread quickly. There we go. Yep. I'll do my best. I'm ready to lay down my life, just like anyone in the Shinsengumi.
体を張る必要はありません。君には土方さんの心を守ってほしいんです。土方さんは強い方ですが、その強さの裏で一人苦しむ方でもあります。そばで支える人間が必要です。俺はそれが雪村君だと思っています。
To stay by Hijikata-san's side and support him was all that I wanted. But can I really do that? Soon we'd be plunged into a violent and bloody battle. How much help could I be to Hijikata-san in the middle of war?
何を言ってるんですか。雪村先輩以外にできるはずがありませんよ。
相馬くんの言う通りです。あの人が誰より心を許しているのは君ですから。
All right. I would protect Hijikata-san's heart. No one else could stay by him in the days to come. It was all on me now. I nodded firmly to Shimada, my mind set. Hijikata's very pale. Wait, we're here? Hold on. This is where we ended up? Wait. So... This is... Oh, it skipped a whole lot. Wow, okay. Suddenly... Crimson splashed to the earth beneath them. Each man thrust his blade through the chest of the other. Fresh, dark blood spewed from Kazuma's mouth. Even as his lifeblood poured out onto the cold ground, Kazuma smiled savagely.
相打ちか。悪くはない。
He squinted his eyes slightly, as if resigning to his fate. Then he collapsed, forever silent, to the ground. Hijikata-san! I ran to his side.
平気だよ。俺がこんなところで死ぬわけねえだろ。
Hijikata-san tried to force an impression that the severity of his wound hadn't affected him in the least, but quickly, looking up and down at him, told me otherwise. Blood was flowing from his chest. This made his gunshot wound from earlier seem like a harmless scratch in comparison. It was up to me to try and stop the bleeding. There had to be a way I could wash and stitch the area. I needed to send for help. Hijikata-san depended on me. His life depended on me. Just as I stood to fetch some help, the crack of a nearby gunshot whipped through the air. Then... I felt the bullet as it passed through my heart. Suddenly, I couldn't feel my hands nor my feet, and I felt my body slam against the cold ground. Perhaps the Imperial Army had charged all the way to Goryokaku after all. I couldn't be sure, but... Hijikata-san, soon, I will join you in the afterlife. I didn't expect that to miss so much. Wow. Time for the unrequited love! Chapter 5. Low romance and low corruption is your recipe. Don't take it back. I tightened my lip into a thin line and stayed quiet. I waited 3 months and finally I was able to be reunited with him. I just couldn't bring myself to accept his rejection of these orders to drive me away.
聞こえねえのか。持って帰れっつったんだ。
He narrowed his eyes, but I didn't move. Finally, with an angry mutter, he tore Otori's letter in half. I'll get him to write another one.
何度来ても同じだ。こんなもの受け取れるはずねえだろ。
Then I will. I'll keep coming back as much as I want. I'll keep bringing them until you do approve of it.
くどいぞ。いい加減にしやがれ。
No, not until you accept these orders. I wanted to cry, but I swallowed my tears and raised my voice to match his own. I'll come back as many times as I have to. I won't stop until you approve it. I squeezed my jaw tightly, doing my best to hold back the tears that threatened to spill out across my hot cheeks. Hijikata-san sighed, defeated.
どうしてそこまでするんだよ。俺なんかにくっついてたっていいことなんざ何一つねえだろうが。
Because I want to help. My answer was ready as soon as he spoke his piece. A lot of people have died for you, for the Shinsengumi. They've left you with a lot of responsibilities. Anyway, Yamazaki, Kondo, Satsu-san, Sana-san, and Heisuke. Every single one of them had cared for Hijikata-san. They wanted the best for the Shinsengumi. Maybe it's arrogant of me, but I want to try and carry on in their place. They were comrades, no, friends of Hijikata-san, and they supported him so much that they gave their lives for him and the Shinsengumi. But here I was, still alive. How could I be proud of what I've done when they've sacrificed everything for Hijikata-san? So for me, there was no happiness, no peace, as long as Hijikata-san was not by my side. I can't fight, and I don't understand politics, I admit. But I can run errands for you, and bring you tea, and anything else you might need. I really didn't care what he asked me to do. I just wanted to do something. I wanted to be useful for Hijikata-san. So please... So please, let me stay. I want to be here with you. He stayed silent as I spoke, and his face was serious. There was no doubt that he knew just how sincere I was. After a few moments, his gaze fell to the floor. I watched his shoulders shift uncomfortably. No.
もういい。それ以上言うな。
His face twitched into a quick smile, but the stress was still plain on his features. Then suddenly his arms were around me. The answer is we've already seen it. You can't do that. We've been over this. Alright, so what are we skipping this time? Horse. Bye. Where are we going? Okay, we're still going here. We're skipping all. Oh my god. Wait, does this mean the unrecorded love is what I think it is? Just then, a red splatter spread like a spider lily came into view. It is what I think it is.
破れたか。構わぬ。これほどの男と最後に刀を交えることができたのだからな。
Kazuma feigned one last eerie smile. Then he crumpled to the floor as if he'd lost the power to support himself. I thought the opposite actually happened. Hijikata-san! Hijikata-san had also come close to collapsing, and I ran over to him as he supported his weight with his sword. I attempted to catch his body, which was quickly becoming dead weight, as he could fall at any moment.
平気だ。急所は外してるからな。これぐらいの傷ならじきに治るさ。
Oh wait, so he did actually. Okay. I tried to take solace in Hijikata-san's optimism, but the color had all but left his face, which under normal circumstances would have spelled death. I couldn't shake the image of what was happening in front of me, and immediately I assumed the worst. Just then. What was the matter? Could I be hallucinating? Just as the thought came to mind. An ash-like powder began to flutter from out of Hijikata-san's sleeves. It was something I had bore witness to before, something I had grown familiar with. I looked into Hijikata-san's eyes, and he silently nodded as if to confirm my fearful suspicions.
ようやく風間に勝ったっつうのに、この結末か。
Hijikata-san, no! Don't say that! The war had finally ended. This was supposed to be the end for both of us, where we could live our lives in peace together.
悪いな。またお前を置き去りにしちまうことになりそうだ。
I was speechless. I struggled to think of anything meaningful to reply with.
達者でやれよ、千鶴。くれぐれも後追いなんてバカなことは考えるんじゃねえぞ。
Hijikata-san extended his hand close to me, softly running his fingers through my hair. Then before I could utter a final goodbye, his body became ash in front of me, disappearing from sight. Oh, I was wrong about who's gonna get that ending. Hijikata-san! Hijikata-san! My lungs were strained as I screamed his name aloud. The only answer to my desperate cries was the soft whistle of wind blowing cherry blossoms around me.